All right. Welcome to Clear Vision Wednesday, YouTube tribe. It's today's a very special guest. I have a very special guest, and I cannot pronounce his last name, and I will have him do that himself. But his name is Victor, his first name, and he's known as the blind biohacker. And we're going to talk about neuroplasticity approaches to retinitis pigmentosa. So welcome, Victor.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
So how do you say your last name? I can never get that right.
Mifsud. I think in the
Mifsud.
English language, a lot of people end up confusing the S and the F, so they call me Misfud. But it's Mifsud. It's actually quite a common Maltese last name. That's my ancestry. My mother and father were both born on the island of Malta.
Wow. Okay. Now I keep learning more and more things about you. So super happy to have you. And you consider yourself a citizen scientist, a biohacker, and you also, work with natural vision improvement. So tell us a little bit about your own story. A lot of people probably have never heard of retinitis pigmentosa and have no clue what that is or what that means. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I was born in Toronto, Canada. And at an early age, I was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa at about 9 years old. And the way I kind of came about it to discover it was, as a kid playing outside, I would be like tripping over a lot of things. And especially when it got dark, I would not be able to see the other children. Two of the main symptoms and side effects of retinitis pigmentosa are tunnel vision, extreme narrowing of the tunnel vision, which happens over time, and night blindness. So I wasn't able to see, as it got darker, the kids playing around, and then it would, lead into tripping over with things. So I would talk to my mother and basically say, like, why is it so difficult to see at night? And she goes, it's dark. Like, what do you want to see? Like, she didn't really understand that it was possible to be night blind or to have night blindness. So, after it kind of kept occurring, I think she started to realize that something was wrong because I wasn't, I was missing some certain things and missing some visual cues. She eventually, we went to this, it's called the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. It's a big hospital where they have a lot of specialists with the eyes there, and I was shortly diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, and I was told that as a kid. The name alone just sounds like such a mouthful, so I didn't really know what it meant, and I was pretty much able to do a lot of the things that I did. I was, although I was diagnosed, I was sort of like passed through the, my vision condition was hidden. So I was just, allowed to do what every other kid did. I was sort of hidden. So I kind of went through the school system, didn't really get any adaptations. I wasn't really, it wasn't really publicly known to the school that I was, losing my vision or the blind kid. I mean, it's also the time as well where parents, I guess, didn't want to have me seen as a disadvantage. So I had to adapt in a lot of ways, and sometimes that was easy to do because it often doesn't appear that there's anything wrong because I do make eye contact, and in certain circumstances it is more prevalent. So I kind of struggled through school. I was also diagnosed with learning disabilities. I think we see with the brain a lot, so there's a lot of information that does get lost, especially with reading and absorption of information. So, school was really hard. And on top of dealing with my vision loss that I was, hiding, that affects, social skills as well. So, so kind of fast forward, I guess my vision wasn't bad enough. I was actually able to, because I guess I had a certain percentage where I was actually still able to get my driver's license, and I did at 16, and I drove for 5 or 6 years until my license got taken away. I actually think there was a certain kind of medication that I took, which probably escalated the problem, which, we can kind of get more into that in terms of health in the eyes. So I think this medication, which was Accutane, worsened my vision. And shortly after, when I was 22, I lost my license, which was really, really devastating for me because it was a source of my independence, and it was a definite sign that things were getting worse. My eyesight was getting worse. I thought I was handling my retinitis pigmentosa, and it didn't really affect my life until I lost my license. I had to sell my car. I had to change how I was getting to work, and it really put a damper on where I thought my life was going. And on top of all this, all these other issues that I wasn't dealing with from a mental health aspect, kind of everything just hit me all at once. So that was a big awakening in some sense that things were not going as planned. And those times of years in my mid-20s to 30s, I was dealing with a lot of mental health issues. I was on all sorts of medications, antidepressant medications, anti-anxiety medications, which weren't doing anything. And I just thought my life, again, was not going where I wanted it to go. And I really felt like I didn't have any control over my health. Listening to doctors, and they're saying, take this, take that, but nothing was working. And I was, talking to therapists as well to try and deal with, the depression of my vision loss and whatnot. And, fast forward to my 30s, I came across some books. One of them was Dr. Norman Doidge. He wrote this book called The Brain That Changes Itself, which is all about neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to change. I also learned about mental health aspects, attention deficit disorder, like true origins of mental health, and ADD, which are based in childhood trauma. This was a book written by Dr. Gabor Maté, who has written some great books on the origins of addiction into like childhood trauma. And these two books really set the stage for showing that I can actually heal myself and take control over my own biology. And it was really, it's really fascinating, and it was really empowering to know that, oh, my body is intelligent, and I can actually heal, as opposed to giving up my power to these, Western medical model doctors where they say, take this drug for the rest of your life, and that's all we know. So, since then, I've learned about so many different modalities. Dr. Jacob Lieberman, who's a mentor of mine, his book, Take Off Your Glasses and See, was a big game changer in my life. Like, why is it that, when we break our arm, we put a cast on and the body just knows what to do? But often we hear anything related with the eyes, whether it's glasses or other vision issues, everyone's like, oh, you can't fix that. Where's this, body intelligence? What's going on with that? So it always confused me, like, why can't the eyes heal? The whole saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And we often thought the brain was, it didn't change after a certain age, but we know that's not true. With the advancements in neuroscience and neuroplasticity, the brain can change. And like I said before, we see with the brain, not with the eyes. So if the brain is plastic, then, the eyes are as well. And I just learned about some really fascinating, through these brilliant minds, and just, I was lucky to actually meet them in real life and learn from them. And I made a documentary film about my healing journey, my inner world healing journey and my outer world healing journey, which I think is very important to heal the body and the mind. So, that's kind of the short of it all. So,
well, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more about how we treat the eyes as if they're just like this one thing that cannot be changed, and even though they are part of the brain, and we see with the brain. So, and your documentary is an amazing film, and we linked everything in the YouTube show notes. And we can also put that here into the chat and with us on Zoom. But basically your documentary was eye-opening. And I think you worked now blanking on the name of the guy who passed away since then,
David Weber.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
So yeah, you did everything from ayahuasca ceremonies to working with Gabor Maté. I mean, but before we get into that, before we get into the solutions, tell us a little bit, because I think most people think you're blind, you know, that was certainly before I got into vision, was my belief. Like, you're blind, you're just like, it's just black and you see nothing, right? Like, so tell us a little bit about, because your handle is obviously Blind Biohacker. So tell us a little bit about the different, like your current ability and how it changed over time, how you improved. You talked about your visual field, right? Because with retinitis pigmentosa, you lose that peripheral vision and you get that tunnel vision. So what has changed? Like, how have you improved? And also, what are the different levels of blindness? Like, just tell us a little bit about that before we get into the solutions.
Well, there's usually, I say there's usually like two parts to vision: your central vision and your peripheral vision. So my central vision is still intact. I mean, I actually did wear glasses, and a lot of my vision improvement stemmed from reducing the need for prescription glasses. So that's what I learned from Dr. Jacob Lieberman, doing vision exercises, palming, reducing my prescription, reducing the crutch, what do you call it? The
diopter?
Yes.
Oh, the nearsightedness, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there was a lot of that, and you know, that was kind of my gateway into it. And once I realized that I often say people don't need their glasses as much as they think they do, and once you kind of get over that, you just realize that like, wow, again, it's very empowering. So that was really the start. I used to wear glasses all the time. I used to wear sunglasses all the time. I've almost given up wearing sunglasses, which, you know, some people say is a bit controversial to protect your eyes, but I was always wearing sunglasses. I had a mass collection of sunglasses, always wearing them. And then I just decided to stop and let the natural light get into my eyes. You know, this is all about circadian rhythm balance. But to go back to my vision condition, retinitis pigmentosa, the main symptoms are night blindness and tunnel vision. So I think over time, my tunnel, ever since I was a child, was shrinking, and I was always told that it was going to shrink into complete nothing, which obviously is pretty scary to deal with. And I was also told that there's nothing that can be done about it. People often ask me, like, oh, can't you just get laser eye surgery? Or isn't there glasses that you can wear? I'm like, it's not about the lens of the eye. It's more about the rods and cones. So it's a rod and cones issue. It's a cellular issue. So you have to think cellularly when you're thinking about fixing this issue. So my visual field has improved. I mean, I've been doing visual fields tests ever since I was, I don't know, for the past 30 years, and the tunnel was shrinking until I started really working at it through various avenues. Color light therapy was a big game changer. Red light therapy with certain red light therapy devices. Peptides has been a game changer. Inner world healing, whether it's been somatic therapy, psychedelic therapy, have been absolute game changers for me. And you know, like there's a rabbit hole that you can kind of go down to, like what is seeing, what is the nature of reality? Like, is this dimension a you know, like a hallucination? Like, why do we dream? What do you see in your dreams? Like, so there's this manifestation of, you know, like Alan Watts once said, how you feel inside is what you see outside your head, or what you see outside of you is how you feel inside your head. So there's this inner world manifestation of your inner feeling projecting to your outside world. And, you know, again, Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So really, there's a lot of us seeing is most of it is unconscious. So how do you like really tap in and address these situations to see effortless seeing as opposed to like stressed emotional seeing? So all these kind of things, I mean, it can get pretty complicated. So I'm just trying to simplify it. But you know, I've done a lot to address my inner world and outer world, so I can live and see freely. So
I
I don't know
love
if
what you shared because it's so much beyond the physical level, right? That's kind of where everybody, but I think that's also the easiest way to get into this is the physical level. And then you realize how much bigger this really is. And so in terms of, I do want to, people are asking about the peptides already. We do want to get into the solutions in just a very short bit, but I would like to know a little bit more. So, because clearly, right, when you lose your vision, especially as a child or teenager or as an early, young adult, having depression and anxiety. I mean, there is even a connection with myopia and anxiety. I mean, so that idea of like losing that sense of freedom, but also how you can cope with everything is really, I can only try to imagine that. Obviously, I don't have that experience myself, but in terms of your life right now, like, your diagnosis was by now, I think you're 45, if I may say that, your diagnosis was you're pretty much like really blind, like you can't see anything. But now you are in Mexico right now, you're traveling. So how does your vision at this point in your life, like maybe limit your life, or how does it not limit your life? Like what have you, what has changed since you started with the Neuroplastic Adventure, as you call your documentary? Like what has changed for you in your ability to function and enjoy life?
Well, I mean, I have my tricks when I function. I do carry an ID cane for certain circumstances. An ID cane, there's various levels to like the blind cane. There's an ID cane and there's a mobility cane. An ID cane is just to sort of identify somebody that has a visual impairment. Again, we're just talking about on the spectrum of blindness. And I don't feel like I need to use it all the time. I mean, there's certain circumstances. I have good eye days and I have bad eye days as well. There's times where I feel like it shifts. And again, my peripheral vision is not just a perfect circle. It kind of like fluctuates based on available light. I'm very in tune with light frequencies. Jacob Lieberman also wrote another book called Light Medicine of the Future, which is an absolute game changer as well. Like he really introduced me to the power of light spectrums and circadian rhythm, and again the power of color light therapy and red light therapy. So I have some tricks. I mean, I carry like flashlights with me for certain dark situations, like living in Mexico versus living in Toronto. Toronto is a flat, well lit. Sidewalks are really stable. There's no like uneven pavement. Here in Mexico is not that way. So I'm really challenged when I'm here in Mexico. There's, poor lighting situations. There's uneven pavement. There's tripping hazards left, right, and center for people who are fully sighted. But what am I going to do? Am I going to like lock myself in my room in Toronto and don't leave the house, or am I going to live my life and travel and have fun? So that's one way of looking at it. And, I want to live and I want to enjoy myself. So, I prepare. I mean, I always carry a little side bag with me. And like I said, there's a flashlight, there's a cane, so I use all these tools as well to help assist. I don't use them all the time. I do use some type of, I don't have them here, but I use blue blocking glasses, various different colors. I have a yellow, a light orange, and a deep red. I carry them with me all the time, whether it's for vision therapy or to help block some forms of light. I mean, it's kind of strange that we like to block natural forms of light like the sun, and we don't block unnatural forms like these, fluorescent light bulbs, which are just in such an unbalanced spectrum. And these LED light bulbs, I mean, they're great for energy saving, but they're just absolute brutal for the eyes, because the spectrum is just such a bright white blue light that's completely unbalanced. And I think this is also leading to, you know, major forms of vision loss. So it's very important to protect your eyes. I mean, I could, you know, we can discuss all the, you know, blue blocking glasses that I use and red light therapy devices as well. Sorry, I'm going to check in. What else did you ask me?
Well, I was just kind of wondering, like, you know, you said you enjoy your life, and I've definitely seen, I haven't known you that long, but a few years, and, you know, how you make the best of it and how you prepare, right? You prepare, but you don't let that limit your ability to really travel and do all those things. So I want to get into the solutions, because you touched on so many things now. You touched about some of the basics in the Bates method, like sunlight and palming. You talked about peptides. You talked about syntonics or color light therapy. You know, so maybe, and we will look at questions on YouTube in just a moment. I'm looking over because I have a second screen where I have all the YouTube questions seeing, and I wanted to make sure that we have enough time to answer those. But maybe start, you know, you talked about a couple of things that were a game changer, right? That really, you know, made the difference for you. So what do you think, considering retinitis pigmentosa and peripheral vision loss, like what were the things, or night vision also, what were the things that really made a big difference? There's always free things like sunlight, right? And then there's things like red light therapy devices and tonic machines that you can't even get as a regular person. So tell us a little bit about the things that you're doing and what you felt has really helped the most.
I gotta say, the one thing that's never like, red light therapy is probably one of the best things that I've used for my body and my eyes and my brain in general. I travel with my light therapy device. I have a small unit. I use it from EMR Tech. That's one of the companies that I like. They're actually Canadian, but they do ship worldwide. I do have a discount code if people are interested. I can put them in the show notes. I use the Firewave unit, and I have this Inferno unit, which covers more of my body. I've had conversations again with, there's a few articles specific to retinitis pigmentosa that the red light therapy, the three main nanometers, they're 680. I can't remember the other two or three, but there's certain kind of there's certain kind of nanometer wavelengths that the thing with these types of red nanometers, they go into the body. That's how red light therapy and infrared spectrum work. So very important to get these. With some devices, some cheaper red light therapy devices, they have an invisible flicker that you can't see. But one way to check is take your phone and film it on slow motion and then play it back with even your house lighting. Take your camera, film these lights in slow motion, and then play them back. And if they are flickering, get rid of them, because this flicker, your brain is like compensating to make up for it. It is draining your energy, it's zapping your mitochondria, and like the light you are surrounded by, especially indoor light, is either making you better or killing you. So make sure the lighting you are under is very, very, very beneficial.
Okay, I want to pause one second. So that's awesome. So the EMR Tech company. So because there's so many red light therapy is now the hottest thing, and there's so many devices out there. So I personally haven't researched all of them, but that's a brand that you have found helpful. And also remind everybody that that is included in sunlight. So you get those light rays for free in sunlight. However, you also get other light rays in sunlight. So have you, do you work with blue blocking? You talked about some blue blocking glasses. Do you use them more for circadian rhythm improvement, or do you actually use them to block blue light? And do you have any screen software? I'm curious about that.
I do have screen software. I'm using the upgraded version of Iris. I like the upgraded version because the flicker is actually really controlled. I also travel with red light bulbs. There's ones that are low flicker. So I pretty much have a night mode for my house. If people like kind of walk by my house in the city or here, they might wonder what's going on. I look like a red light district or something.
I was just saying, like the red light district.
Yeah, but you know, it's very beneficial for the eyes. I mean, I don't turn on any like above here. There's some of these weird bright LED, and you know, my place here now is you know, in Mexico, it's a rental apartment, but I have bulbs. I just change the lamps to these bulbs, so I travel with those. Highly recommend doing that. I do have. I use raw optics for blue blocking glasses, and I believe I have a code for them too. They make great pairs. They have like a day pair and a night pair. So again, pretty much with anything, you're just mimicking what's going on outside. You know, you know, I mean, we can have a whole other conversation about circadian rhythm balance and how it protects your eyes, how it protects your sleep. You know, I don't want to jump around too much here.
I know we can go on forever.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, I mean, what else? I don't know if you want to.
So what other things? So the light, you talked a little bit about color light therapy, and I don't know if that was just the infrared light and the sunlight, or if you're using other and the blue blocking, or if you use other color, because there is such a thing like in optometry called the syntonics, which is a special and you have to be trained. That's not just something you can buy on the market. But are you using that kind of light therapy as well?
Yes, my optometrist in Toronto, Dr. Angela Peddle, she was referred. I was referred to her by Dr. Norman Doidge, because he's also in Toronto, and I've been given prescribed color for me, and I think everyone has a different color prescription if they do want to work with Syntonic. So it's like what you said, Clyde, it's not about just going out and trying them, because, but I think the general rule of thumb is the color you are fearing the most, and it's done through like a procedure to sort of guide you through what color you do like and you don't like. The color you don't like is usually the one that you need to work with the most, and some of these colors are aligned with, you know, the chakra system, and it's a very, very interesting. I know, again, to bring up Dr. Jacob Lieberman, he's written about it, I think, in his last book as well, this Luminous Life, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, I mean, so it's good to work with somebody if you do want to get into color light therapy. And again, there's a lot of great info on it out there. So yeah, I mean, I don't have anyone specific with that, but I do use some type of to block a bit. I mean, the sun in Mexico versus the sun in Canada is very different, and you have to ease your way into the sun. Depends on your haplotype, skin type as well, because vitamin D is very important. I prefer to get vitamin D from light as opposed to taking supplements. But you know, the winters in Canada are pretty dark, and you know, for 3 months out of the year, the sun is actually not making vitamin D, which is why I usually come here. Yeah, what else? I don't know. What else?
So instead of taking supplements, I love it. You just travel to Mexico. I live in Los Angeles, and my vitamin D levels were really low, even though I'm outside in the sun all the time. And I realized I had a genetic issue with, so I have to take supplements. So, but I fully agree, if it's possible to get enough and you measure it, and that's where lab tests come in. So by the way, on YouTube, they're asking about all the books. You can probably give us a link of all the books, so we can look at the replay, and we will post them in the show notes, because I didn't have all that list, so we can't type it up as fast, but we will make sure that all the books that that Victor mentioned, and I have them all in my bookshelf behind me because they're really great books. So I'm going to look at some. Do you want to talk a little about peptides? There was a question about like what peptides have you been using and how have they helped you?
Yeah, I see something from Ruth here talking about visomycin. I actually do use visomycin. It's a Russian eye drop. The formula is actually an SKQ1, and it's developed by the Russians. The Russians developed a lot of these bioregulator peptides that are available in capsule form, and some of them are injection. These bioregulators focus on different systems, nervous system, eyes, brain. So you kind of need to target a few systems when you're working with these bioregulator peptides. I know there are some practitioners now. A good friend of mine, Natalie Nidham, she runs the Biohacking Superhuman Performance podcast. She talks a lot about bioregulators. There's a couple of great YouTube videos. They are in Russian, but they are translated, showing the work that the Russians have done with optometry and the eyes, using this peptide called retinamylin. So it's a retina peptide, which I've used multiple times. And I think this one was also a game changer for me, because it's actually, the studies are actually specific to retinitis pigmentosa, which is very interesting. See, the thing with these is they're not patentable. So, we can have conversations about big pharma and all that, but it's like people ask, like, why haven't I heard about them? It's like, this is probably, there's also, they're from Russia, so there's kind of stuff going on too, but they are available through various websites. Cosmic Nootropics is one, but you can definitely find them. We'll write down some of these peptides in the chat.
That would be very helpful. We will add them all to the YouTube show notes as well. We will make sure we put all those in there. But do you work with a practitioner to help you determine, or are you basically just testing different things on yourself and see what happens? Like, because obviously we want to make sure that this is not medical advice here that we're giving, right? Victor is sharing about his own journey and his own things that he's trying, and this doesn't mean that everybody should start taking all these peptides, right? I just want to make that clear, that you probably should get some medical advice from a trusted person. I just want to leave it at that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we all have the freedom to choose an experiment, but at the same time, these are things that you could, do some damage and reverse. I mean, peptides are relatively safe. That's the great part about them. They have a very low side effect profile. But with other things, it's always good to work with a practitioner. And there are people out there. Just, if I found them, you can too. I have been working with various doctors in the United States and Canada in regards to peptides. So they're quite helpful. I'm still working with them. It's not a magic bullet in the sense where you use them once. These take time. If this eye disease took some time to develop, it might take some time to stop and reverse. But the big thing is hope. The big thing is that it's most definitely possible to change. It's definitely possible to heal, and ask the right questions. And I think, we didn't really talk about the inner work and trauma.
I want to talk about that. I think it's really important. I want to get to that almost. But I do want to ask one more thing about psychedelics, because that's now the hot new thing, right? And they're using it for depression therapy and other kind of things. And so, I have very limited experience with psychedelic mushrooms, a little bit, but very little. So tell us a little bit about how that's been helpful. And then I definitely want to come into the inner world, and maybe the psychedelics are a great bridge to come also to the inner world a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, psychedelics are, very fascinating, very, very fascinating. I mean, there's different types of psychedelics. I mean, we've all heard of, magic mushrooms. Then there's some that grow naturally. We've heard about ayahuasca, I think, which is an Amazonian plant mixture that has been used for thousands and thousands of years. Then there's more newer ones like MDMA and LSD. And these all have different effects on the body. They need to be used with reverence and proper set and setting, because they are very powerful. Also, integration is probably one of the most important things to to use post any of these, working with these medicines. Very important. I mean, there are practitioners and there are people, and they are so impactful on neuroplasticity as well as emotional regulation, because I think a lot of the stuff that goes on is stuck in our unconscious mind, and these medicines allow this wall to open up, and these traumatic energies that are almost spinning inside the body, and they manifest into illness, they can finally get relieved. And there's usually like immune issues are usually connected to some type of stuck trauma. Dr. Gabor Maté talks a lot about this. He's got a great new book called The Myth of Normal, which gets into why some people's issues that were kind of impressed early on end up manifesting into various diseases, cancer. I have a theory that my retinitis pigmentosa is an ancestral genetic trauma that kind of was passed on, that wasn't relieved and almost passed on genetically. So, these medicines are quite powerful at unblocking depression and trauma. They also are shown to drastically reduce inflammation. Like anything that has an itis, retinitis, the itis means inflammation. So, but why is it there? We can have different theories about that. So, these medicines are powerful, and again, to be used with reverence. And I had a pretty interesting conversation with Ray about psychedelics, and people used some medicines that were in combination with vision therapy that had some pretty amazing results. So the combination of the two is I think we need more research into that. Again, it's really creating this proper environment. And there's a saying that goes, you can't get well in the same environment you got sick in. And once you realize what an environment really means, it's inner environment and outer environment and your quantum environment. Like with the sun and light, get out of a city and don't expose yourself to too much electromagnetic frequencies. Just because you can't see these things doesn't mean they're not there. That's another thing that blindness has taught me. We know a radio works. Like, where's the signal coming from? Now we're going into like 4G, 5G. Are these safe? I don't know. How are we going to find out? So again, it's really like knowing your environment, and intelligence is really learning how to see the invisible. So.
Wow, Victor. I mean, I love how deep this is going, because you're absolutely right. This is it's so much more than the physical level, right? So we have to really and I'm curious, do you have a specific protocol that you do every day? What do you do for your, we can call it inner game, or for your inner world? You did talk about psychedelics, how they can open the door to the unconscious and help you to find some of these buried deep down feelings, emotions, experiences, and traumas. Do you have a specific protocol you do daily? I'm just curious, and other things you can tip. You gave so many tips already, and some of these are more complicated, like finding a syntonics practitioner, or finding somebody who can help you with psychedelics or those things. But what are some? First of all, I'm curious about your protocol, if you do one each day that is for not just the physical stuff, but also the emotional and mental well-being, and also any other tips that you can give people on that kind of inner level.
Yeah, I mean, grounding is a big thing that I really like to do, which is walking barefoot, touching the earth. That's something I do on a daily basis. That's actually proven to radically reduce inflammation. Most people are walking around with rubber-soled shoes and not even making direct contact with the earth's electromagnetic field. And if you're overexposed to just being surrounded by Wi-Fi and other things, your body's picking it up, but it needs to get grounded. So that's something I do on a daily basis. The first thing in the morning that I like to do is go look at the sun. It's sunrise. It's, upon waking, it's one of my daily meditations, and I just sit there and I'm not on tech. I like to just have a moment as opposed to jumping right into like Instagram, Twitter, blah, 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 like all this like bombarded. The other thing is, if you're looking at your phone with its full brightness first thing in the morning, you're automatically disrupting your circadian rhythm because you're telling your eye clock that it's, the brightness of that spectrum is like, noon in Ecuador, when, the eyes need this slow build of this infrared spectrum from outdoors. So again, keep your circadian rhythm in check, and the same thing at night, like wind down in the evening, have the red light bulbs and switch your phone to like night mode. I do this to my phone at night. I don't know if you can kind of see that, where it's like a deep red. I use an iPhone. There's a little quick trick that you can use to go in the settings. There's a couple of YouTube videos. It's just an accessibility where you just, click on a couple things and then you click the home button 3 times and this little thing pops up and hit color, and then it'll change your screen red. And I think there's a few apps for Androids that you can put to do that. So, be aware of the light you're surrounding yourself with.
Yeah, I would put that link in there because I use an iPhone too, and I have night shift mode on, so my phone is yellow all day. I always have it to the warmest settings, but I didn't know about the red one. That's very cool. So at night you can actually make it red.
Yeah.
So maybe at some point you can send me the video link to that, and we can post it also in the show notes, because how to do that in your settings.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really, really easy. I listen to a lot of meditation music. Like binaural beats, certain frequencies, 432, 528, some binaural beats. Sound therapy is very healing. I discussed this in my documentary film, The Power of Sound Therapy, because it's energy, right? So that's a big part of it. And to go back to like therapy, like one doesn't have to do psychedelics. There's a whole legal status around them, and certain things are legal, like ketamine therapy, and I'm not pushing anyone into doing these medicines because they're big and they're powerful and they are again not a magic bullet. I mean, there's other modalities that can be equally as powerful. One of them is somatic therapy, which is non-psychedelics based, but it really gets into where the stuck emotions are and have them feel safe to come out. I mean, that's what these medicines are doing, and that's what these therapies are doing. So it's very, very powerful. So I mean, working with a somatic therapist is highly beneficial. I'm always doing red light therapy. Like I said, I travel with it. I cycle certain peptides. When I'm traveling, it's a bit harder to do some of them. I did need to inject, and some of them it's not something that you're taking every day because you have to cycle them. So sometimes it's like a 10-day on, 10-day off thing. Some of the things like the eye drops I do use visomycin, which is a little trickier to get, but it's there if you kind of look around. I think Cosmic Nootropics sells it. But then there's a few that I do buy that you can buy on online. One of them is called CanC. It's a NAC based eye drop. In Canada, there's one called AOR, Ortho Eyes, which is the same formula, NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine, if I'm
I know,
right.
I know what you mean. I can never
Yeah, it's NAC drops. NAC is actually a peptide as well, and it's shown to preserve and it's really good for. Sorry, it's just a little truck going by here.
we don't hear it. You're good. We haven't heard anything.
Oh, okay, good. These are good for cataracts, these are good for just to keep the lens of the eye really supple, because I think over time it does tend to harden depending on diet, depending on environment. So there's a lot of good data showing that NAC eye drops are very beneficial, and these can get easily online or over the counter in some health food shops. So I use NAC ortho eyes. I take them every day as well. Just, one of the big simple things is just get outside. Like, don't spend time indoors, because you're always your body was designed to be outside. So just, your mental health will improve. I was also told by a couple of doctors that my health will improve with my tan. So, it's always made a huge impact. I mean, you ask most people, like, why do they feel good when they go on vacation? Because they're grounding most of the time in the beach. They're getting good sun. Sun is powerful, and it's a tool. And if you've been stuck in winter all year in Canada or the northern United States, and then you go to somewhere like Mexico, like, be careful, because you'll get burnt, but you have to really know how to use the power of it. Like, what time of day are you going out, and mitigate using it. So it is powerful, but once you understand that to know how to use the sun, it's very healing. So
Been super helpful. We don't have questions on YouTube, except everybody wants to get your links and your resources, and we will get all those and put them in there. And everybody's been saying, like, so many valuable tips and health tips overall. And yes, so great feedback. This was so interesting and helpful. And you can we have posted the links, but you can reach Victor on Instagram and Twitter at Blind Biohacker. And then we also have the links to your documentary, and you have a little trailer on YouTube, so you can, and I think it's very inexpensive to rent that documentary. It's called My Neuroplastic Adventure, right? You want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there's actually two versions. There's a TV version and a full length version. I think the TV version is on iTunes. It used to be available. The TV version used to be available on Amazon Prime. I need to talk to my producers to find out where it is. I do have the feature length. I think this year it's up and open, so I can actually post the full version. I'll probably upload the full version to YouTube once I sort that all out. But this is about my journey in the past 10 years working with Dr. Gabor Maté. He makes an appearance in the film. I worked with David Weber, who is featured in Dr. Doidge's second book, who used the Feldenkrais method to heal his uveitis. Very fascinating. I talked about sound therapy in the book. I talk about psychedelics. I talk about somatic therapy with my therapist. So it's just, all the modalities that I used and how it helped me, and it's great. I mean, check out the trailer. It's called My Neuroplastic Adventure. The link's there. And I am working on a vision optimization summit where I've been talking with 11 people, Dr. Angela Petal. I do interview Dr. Jacob Lieberman. I talk with Ray Gottlieb, Dr. Jack Cruz, Matt Maruka from Raw Optics, and a few other people. But that's coming. We had a few hiccups along the way in terms of where I wanted to put it and how I wanted to get it out there. But just keep an eye out for that, whether it's on my Instagram channel or with Claudia. But there's a lot of good information out there, and we're at a very interesting time, both amazing and kind of like scary with where things are going. But I think if we all heal ourselves, I think we can make a better future by taking responsibility for our own health.
Thank you. You're such a beacon of light and such a leader in this, world of eye disease where, most people are scared and feared and just told there's nothing you can do. So I'm so grateful for you being here and sharing your knowledge. And yes, we appreciate you very much. And we will add all this to YouTube, and thank you. And we will have a little extra time with our Clear Vision Club members on Zoom. So goodbye, YouTube. We see you next week. And you want to say any last sentence, any kind of last message to everybody?
I guess, going blind really taught me what it means to see,
Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Victor. And